Hello and welcome to this week's live cast. I am Jamie of Stonemaier Games, and today, as usual on Wednesday, I'm here to talk about some random topics to answer any questions that you have about Stonemaier Games or me or life, whatever you want to ask about, and to share Stonemaier Games news, of which I have a little bit, not like big breaking news, but some relevant news. Just so I don't forget, I don't have any chocolate on my desk today, but I usually do a chocolate of the day. Oh, I think it'll be dark chocolate covered almonds. I forget the brand, but there's a really nice brand that makes chocolate covered almonds that I'm looking forward to enjoying later today, or maybe after this live cast. Yeah, what's going on this week? First, I want to say my heart goes out to people in California right now who are suffering from the wildfires. It looks terrible over there. Hopefully, it's not terrible everywhere, but the air quality looks terrible, and I know it's really scary to be pushed out of your home due to something like that. And I even saw what is it, Cody over at Far Off Games. He had a heart wrenching post about how he was forced out of his home. Fortunately, I think so far his home is okay, but I don't know. In his e-newsletter, it looks pretty grim over there. So I hope he's doing okay, and everybody at Far Off Games is doing okay in California. And then there's the hurricane that's striking Alabama and Florida in the U.S. right now as well, and might hit Louisiana. So just a rough time for the environment and natural disasters. I hope everyone's okay. Looks like we're joined today by Ernani, Tom, Cameron, Kevin, Carlos. Let's see, Carlos has a question here. He says he's happily waiting for his copy of Tapestry Plans and Ploys, the shipping of which is going well. I think I've heard some fulfillment centers are done. Some, like the one in the U.S., I think they'll go through Monday and Tuesday because they have thousands of orders to ship out. But we're getting pretty close at this point. Carlos says he got okay. Well, I'll just read his comment. He says he was thinking about the solo campaign in Tapestry Plans and Ploys, and then his thoughts got mixed with thoughts about The Crew. The Crew is a cooperative game where you play a series of escalating missions. They start off very simple and they get harder and harder. And he says his idea was a logbook of missions for Stonemaier games, like on Viticulture, complete among all players 50 points using only orders with sparkling wine, or on Tapestry, have one player have more than 30 points playing with the Nomads and using only these Tapestry cards. Do I think that might be cool? Yeah, it sounds kind of like along the lines of the achievement sheet that I put in Scythe. I put it in My Little Scythe. Where else have I put it? Charterstone kind of has some built-in things like that along the way. I guess Tapestry doesn't have anything official like that. But yeah, I love achievement sheets like that, or even if they're used in the Crew style of progressive difficulty. I think that's really nice too. I think that works particularly well for the Crew because it's a very, very short game. But I think the achievement system does work really well for longer games. And feel free to apply your creativity to that and post in the corresponding Facebook groups if you'd like. I'm looking over here for other questions here. Some nice well wishes in the comments today. Chris says, did I miss Wingspan expansion news? No, Chris, the Wingspan expansion news for Wingspan Oceania will come on September 30th. So that's when we'll start to reveal details about what's in the expansion. So that's a couple weeks away in our September 30th e-newsletter and the live cast. I do really look forward to talking about that, though. In terms of things I can talk about, our Scythe Digital launched today worldwide on iOS. It had been available in a few regions, kind of in not technically beta mode, but they really, Asmodee Digital released it in a few regions first, and then they did a wide release today. So it is now available in the US and worldwide, as far as I know. Also, as far as I know, Monster Couch is indeed releasing Wingspan Digital to Steam tomorrow. I don't know exactly when they will also release it on iOS and Android and Switch, Nintendo Switch, but they do have planned releases for all those, just not dates quite yet. But if you really look forward to playing Wingspan digitally, the full AI version, it's from what I can tell, it's a beautiful rendition of it. It'll be available on Steam tomorrow on September, 17th. So that's some Stonemaier Games news right there. I have a little bit of other news that I'll share in a minute, but let me scan back over here for questions. Looks like Madison is joining us live for the first time. George just received his copy of Tapestry Plans and Ploys an hour ago. Ivan says, is the camera moved to a different angle? This has been my angle for a little while. I guess maybe it shifted a little bit, but I think it's pretty accurate. Yeah, you can actually on my Sunday sit down video this past week, which featured my coworker Alex Schmidt's top 10 favorite games right now. Great video. Alex has some great insights about the games that he loved, but he was kind of interrupted. It was me talking about it, but in the background were my cats on that chair getting into an escalating series of disagreements that resulted in me ended up picking up Biddy and removing him from the situation. So check out, if you love cat stuff happening in the background of videos, check out my Sunday sit down video from this past week on my YouTube channel, because you'll see a lot of cat action in that. And hopefully you can listen to Alex's thoughts that I present in the video, because he has some great thoughts about the games that he plays and loves as well. Chad says, do I have a favorite market in Euphoria? There's some, actually, one of my favorite names in Euphoria, there are more market names than the mechanisms, but the Disassemble a Bear Workshop, which is kind of the opposite of Build a Bear, which is a real world company. I do like that name. I think that is one that I came up with, and I really do like that. There's also a market that has me on it. I make a cameo appearance on one of the markets. It's the Friendly Local Game Bonfire, I think, or Friendly Local Bonfire, something like that. Another Ivan says, is it true that Scythe Digital is available now? It is indeed. Yeah, that is one of today's big announcements. Asmodee Digital has released Scythe on iOS. Or actually, Scythe Digital has been available for a while on Steam, but Scythe iOS specifically, I guess in timed with Apple's big announcements yesterday, is now available on iOS. As normal, for any digital release, we license the digital rights to our games to other companies. So I get the information pretty much at the same time that you do. So I will try to answer any questions about digital games, but typically you probably know what I know. Or if you don't, I don't know it either. But feel free to ask, and I'll let you know if I know the answers. Tim says that he's seen, with all the destruction happening right now, the hurricanes, the wildfires, other things happening in the world, Tim says he's seen fellow gamers discuss which games they took as they evacuated. Oh, these people who were actually evacuated. This wasn't a hypothetical, which is really hard. He says, and why they chose those games. Tim says he would take some Stonemaier selections if disaster was imminent. What are some of your must-haves? Honestly, as much as I treasure my games, if I had to evacuate, I don't know. I definitely don't think games would be my top priority. I would look for, a few pieces of clothing. My cats, I'd have to find, make sure that I'm transporting everything I need for my cats, and make sure that Megan is taken care of. If I had to grab a few games, it would probably be some of the games that I featured on my recent travel-friendly game list. Games that are very small and easy to travel with and have a lot of replayability. A few of the games on the list were the aforementioned The Crew. I think The Mind travels really well. It's a list of games that mostly feature cards, and that they're it's easy to sit down and play on a very small playing surface. So that's kind of a different question than what you asked, Tim. What are my must-have games? If I really had time to pack up and prepare, if I had to move out for a while and I had time to pack up and prepare, and I had some room in my car, I'd pick some of my favorite games, some of my favorite games on the list. I guess one of those, a couple over here that I see on the shelf are Tzolk'in, Azul Summer Pavilion I really love, Architects of the West Kingdom recently made my top 10, so maybe I'd grab those. But I'd also go for variety. Stefan says, I know you're a revisionist history fan, and he's capitalizing those words. That is a podcast by Malcolm Gladwell that I really do enjoy. He says, have I read any of Malcolm Gladwell's books? He says, I just finished The Tipping Point, beautiful stuff. I have read most of his books, and mostly I read at night in bed, I read novels. But Malcolm Gladwell, there's a time in my life I was dating someone long distance, and as I was driving to go see my girlfriend, I would listen to Malcolm Gladwell books in the car, because he is really pleasant to listen to. He just has a really nice reading voice, and he reads all of his audiobooks to you. So most of the reading that I've done on Malcolm Gladwell's books are him, Gladwell reading his books to me in the car. I haven't read any of his more recent stuff. I think he's only had maybe one book in the last 5 or so years, because he's focused a lot more on the podcast. But the podcast is great. It's also him talking to you and just telling you stories and revealing information in the Revisionist History podcast. Miles is here. Miles says, have I had the chance to play Tekenhu yet? He says his first couple games have been really fun, but definitely taking some time for me to wrap my head around it. I haven't played it yet. No, I don't. I don't actually know anyone right now. I think some of my at least one of my friends might have it, but I have limited access to friends right now in terms of playing games because of the pandemic. So no, I haven't played it yet, but I'm glad you're enjoying it. I need to play it because I do love the Tzolk'in series of games from those designers. Some games that I have been able to play recently. I did get together for a Stonemaier Games playtest the other day at Alan's house. Alan has a nice outdoor gazebo, so we got together with masks, sat outside, and played a playtest of a Stonemaier project. And the next day, I got together with just Joe and Alex's wife to play a game. Again, wearing masks. This time it was inside, but we are all very good at self-isolating, so I felt safe playing this game with them. And we played High Rise, which Joe learned and taught, and Joe also learned and taught Project L, which I did a video on yesterday. High Rise is coming back to Kickstarter in a few weeks, and so I've timed my favorite mechanism video to go live with that, with the release of that Kickstarter. Completely unrelated to Gil, it's just something I wanted to do in case it gave Gil a little bump, because High Rise is a fantastic game. I had a really, really good time with it, and I want people to know about it when the reprint Kickstarter goes live. I also played another game of Magic Jumpstart with Megan. I played with a cats and dogs deck. If you don't know, Magic Jumpstart it's a series of booster packs where you don't know what's in the pack, but what you'll find in every pack is a themed half deck. And you'll take two of these booster packs and you'll shuffle them together and play. And so I had a cats deck and a dog deck that I really wanted to play, shuffled those two decks together to form one cohesive deck, and played a game against Megan. She was playing Tree Hugging Spirits, I believe. And I beat her in the first game, mostly due to mana screw on her part, and then she crushed me in the next game with her flyers. We also played Calico again. We wanted to give Calico another chance, and so we played it again. I think that was all the games that I played this weekend. I'll jump back over to questions here. Aaron says, he was curious to see if I could answer something for me. Well, we will see if I can. Do you find that certain types of games, like deck building, Euro games, etc., seem to click better with you? If so, do you take that into consideration while coming up with a new game? Do they click better with me? There's certain games that are certainly easier to learn than other games. And I guess clicking can also refer to how much I enjoy a game. I think there are a couple different interpretations of that. Clicking also can refer to how quickly I feel like I can master the strategy of a game. So I guess all those things into consideration. Sure, there's some games that just inherently click better with me. I do gravitate towards the wide umbrella of Euro games much more than traditional Amerithrash games that have maybe a lot of luck and randomness involved in it. But I do love some luck. I have found that I really love push your luck because I have some agency over the decisions in great push your luck games. But yeah, there are a lot of game mechanisms that I love. If you see my YouTube channel, I have hundreds and hundreds of videos about different games and my favorite mechanisms in those games. And all those games, many of those favorite mechanisms do fall into the Euro category of giving players agency and control over their decisions. There's such a wide variety that ultimately, to answer your question, does that come into consideration when I'm coming up with a new game? Yeah, I try to design games with mechanisms I enjoy, but there are a lot of mechanisms that I enjoy. I will mention that worker placement is one of my favorite mechanisms, and for a long time I found myself gravitating towards that mechanism because I think it is such a wonderful way of doing action selection in a game. But I've tried to push away from that a little bit because I don't want to just design worker placement games. Chad says, do I know my highest score in Tapestry? I don't know it offhand. I don't think I've crossed 300, but I've gotten pretty close. Ivan says, any news of an upcoming roll and write? So I have kind of informally announced that we are making a printed version of Rolling Realms. I just finished another wave of blind playtesting the other day because I am adding a pendulum realm to the game. That's, I guess, a bit of a spoiler there. I don't know if I was going to officially say that, but there were originally 9 realms, each based on our 9 games, and we have Pendulum, our new game right now. So I wanted to add a pendulum realm as well to the game. So, and that also adds a little bit of replayability. There's already a lot of replayability in Rolling Realms because of the way that you match up the different realms each round, but it's a 3-round game, and now we'll have 10 realms. And so every game there will be one realm that doesn't get played at all. And it leaves us a nice, easy way to expand the game in the future by adding new realms. Um, so yeah, I wouldn't say it's necessarily new, but because we have already revealed lots of what Rolling Realms is, but you will find out in the future next year sometime what the final printed fancier version looks like, and it's still at a very affordable price, I think. In fact, well, compared to free, it is more expensive, but I think it'll be very affordable. Philip says, I'm really happy you finally got to enjoy the Commissioner Ralph trophy. And this was a fun thing that happened a few weeks ago where a friend of mine, Alex Goldschmidt, not Alex Schmidt who works for us, but Alex Goldsmith. I'm sorry, I said Goldschmidt, Goldsmith, who is one half of the Dukes of Dice podcast and used to work for Gray Fox Games. He lives in St. Louis now. He got married a couple weekends ago, and he had a bachelor party on Zoom with a lot of people in the game industry. I was overwhelmed with how many wonderful people from the game industry, including Philip, joined that podcast. And not always in the game industry, but gaming community too. Just Alex's friends around the world in the gaming community and industry. And Philip showed off his trophy from Baseball Highlights, the card game Baseball Highlights. And it was just really neat. And also later in the podcast, or later in the Zoom call, Mike Fitzgerald, the designer of that game, joined in as well. It was really, really cool. I was a little overwhelmed with how many people were in this Zoom call. There was like 25 different people. And so I kind of just sat back and soaked it in and enjoyed it and listened along and laughed. And we all had drinks that we toasted whenever anyone else joined it. It was really cool. I'm glad you mentioned that, Philip, because I haven't mentioned that on my live cast yet. Stefan says, hopefully this isn't picking your favorite child, but is there a specific mechanism in one of your games that I'm the most proud of? You know, I have a video about this. I don't know if Cody might mention it, but I mentioned my favorite mechanisms in each of the Stonemaier games that I hope other companies emulate because I love the mechanism so much, and that I mentioned some games that already use these style of mechanisms. There's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of mechanisms in my games that I love, and so it's hard to pick just one. Is there one that I'm the most proud of? I can't. I mean, I could pick one for every game, really, and maybe even multiples for each game. So I don't know if I can really say that. One that popped to mind randomly is in Charterstone. There is a component that, and this isn't a spoiler at all. There is a spoiler component, but I won't mention that one. But the component of having sticker cards where you peel a sticker off the card and continue to have a use for the card after that, I don't think has been done in a game before. And part of my reason for thinking that is that Panda had to buy a new machine just to make that happen, just to enable that possibility. And I would love to see other games do that, where you peel a sticker off a card and then the remaining card still serves an important function in the game. I think that's really cool in Charterstone, both a mechanism and a component, and I would love to see that in other games. There is the kind of the rough equivalent of that in some of the Pandemic Legacies, where you scratch off a card and that card still serves a purpose. But I like the sticker. I mean, the sticker is something you're removing to put somewhere specific, and the card still serves a purpose. Chad says, not sure if you watch New Girl. I have. I've watched New Girl. I've completed the series at this point. But does Alex have a jar like Schmidt has in the show? What is the Schmidt jar? Oh, because Alex's last name is Schmidt. I'm trying to think of the jar that he has. I don't remember the jar. I'm sure it's something, but I haven't watched the show in a few years. So I don't think Alex does, but I'm not sure. Alex says, do I know when the French version of Tapestry Plans Employees will be available? I know the worldwide release date is for the English version is October 30th. Sometimes localization partners try to time it with that, but I don't know specifically about Madigo's version of the game of the expansion. So you have to ask Madigo about that. What else? Oh, I did a blog post on Monday about the concept of is it just me? With the question being like why I was addressing the idea and the realization, the understanding of why fans of games, people who are really excited and passionate about games or products, post sometimes not negative comments, but questions that maybe challenge creators about things that are wrong with their specific copy of the product online. And I frame it in the reference of like, is it just me? I have a copy of the game. This one thing is wrong with it, and I post online. Is it just me? Is this problem just me, or does everyone have that issue? And I gave some examples for that, and had a really and not a lot of people commented on the post. A few people did, more on Facebook, but it was kind of interesting to think through that and for me to better understand why people do that. Because typically, when I have a problem with one of my games, I either just deal with it, I'm fine with it, or I contact the publisher for like a replacement part, that type of thing. I rarely, very rarely, post publicly about an issue with a product that I have. Extremely rare that I do that. Because I try to focus on what value am I adding to anyone, what benefit am I adding to anyone by expressing this problem. However, in writing this blog post and looking at some of the recent examples of this, I think I have a better understanding of it now, why people sometimes do that. I don't think there's always a good reason to do that, and I think there's a good way to do it as a customer and a good way to respond as a company. But I think there are circumstances where it's really a good idea for all parties to actually post about, is it just me? Is this problem just related to me, or are other people experiencing this same issue? Ivan says, that's true about cats. Say it's been like 6 months since you moved in. Do you really like it? You know neighbors and neighborhood. It's been like 6 months. I'm not quite exactly sure what your question is, Ivan. I did move about a year ago to the place where you can see now. And if you go back and look at some of my older videos from a year ago, you can see a different condo in the background. So I did move around a year ago. That might be what you're referring to in terms of the shift in the camera angle. Maybe that's it. Vicky from the UK says, I've not yet played any Stonemaier games solo. Which would I recommend that Vicky try first? She has Viticulture, Wingspan, Tapestry, and Pendulum so far. You know, Vicky, I am not a big solo player myself. I design the multiplayer versions of our games, and then we have a separate company, or we don't have it. There is a separate company called Automafactor that designs the solo version. So I haven't even played all the solo versions of our games. But I can say, if you're new to solo games, the one that I have played, because of how easy it is to learn and play, is the Viticulture solo game. It is very simple and streamlined to play, in my opinion. And so I would recommend starting with Viticulture, and then, I don't know, from there I would go on to whichever of those games you enjoy the most, because it will take a little extra effort to learn the solo rules of a game, but once you have it, it will feel like, or it should feel like, you're playing against an intelligent opponent in a really interesting way. But I'd start with Viticulture. Viticulture is very simple to learn the solo version of. But I'm open to other recommendations here in the comments below from people who maybe were new to solo and tried one of our games, if they have a recommendation for you. People have mentioned here that Scythe isn't just available on iOS today, but it is also available on Android. That's a great distinction. I appreciate you bringing that up. And I'm glad that they released iOS and Android at the same time. I know that's important to people who are Android folks. Here's my phone, I am an Apple person myself. At least for phones. For computers, I'm a PC. John says, with regards to licensing Scythe for digital, or any of our games for digital, he says, how does it work with Scythe and Iron Harvest? Who decides the path of the IP? Iron Harvest is a completely different game. We're not associated with it at all. Iron Harvest is a game set in the 1920-plus world that Jakob owns. So, digital game, video game, or real-time strategy game set in the 1920-plus world that Jakob owns, and we have the tabletop rights to that world. Other companies could have other rights. There could be a company that has the TV rights, the film rights, the role-playing game rights, which arguably could fit into tabletop games, but we don't make role-playing games in some of our games, and the digital rights. So they all come back to Jakob. Jakob is the hub for all those rights. Thank you, Cody, for posting some of these videos in the comments here if you're on Facebook Live. This video will later be on YouTube as well, so some of these references won't make sense for the YouTubers, but this video will remain on Facebook Live as well. Giancarlo says, I asked you a few weeks ago about the reprint of Scythe Invaders from Afar in Italy by Genos Games, and you said it was due to be restocked in September, but Genos didn't post any news, and some Italian stores state that it'll be available after the 10th of October. I think this is the problem whenever I try to speak for a localization partner. I really shouldn't answer those questions. You should just go to Genos and get the answer because I don't control their release dates. Um, and it's not my news to announce. So I would just go to Genos and get the answer from them. And if they're not answering you, it means that maybe they're not ready to announce it yet. So just wait until they announce it. It shouldn't be too much longer. Tony has a question about Wingspan and regarding the new Wingspansion. He says, looking at the cards in the current European expansion and thinking about the plan to release additional sets for other continents, I'm wondering if you have any perspective on the size of the Wingspan big box. Are we talking Gloomhaven scale here? I can't recall if Gloomhaven fits into a Calyx shelf, but we are working on a Wingspan big box. Not just to be very clear, there's nothing in the box except for an organizer, no gameplay content. But we are working on that, and we plan to design it around fitting into I'm gesturing over here to a shelf that you can't see, into a standard IKEA Calyx shelf. So the height dimensions of the box and width will be no bigger than 296 millimeters, which is the standard size of game boxes that we use now. So I don't know if it'll be quite the size of the Gloomhaven box. I haven't measured that box in a long time. But yeah, it'll fit into a Calyx shelf and probably be pretty deep and pretty big. Ivan says, have I played any of the escape room games like Cabin in the Woods? What are my thoughts on games that you only play once? I think games aim for different experiences. I've played a lot of the Time Story modules. They are one-off experiences. Really love that. I'm fine with that. I love legacy games. They are campaign experiences usually, but they're also one-off plays. I'm totally fine with that because that's the experience they're designed for. I have played a few escape room games. I think I've played one exit game and maybe two of the unlock games and the escape room in a box werewolf experiment. Really enjoyed that one. Really enjoyed all of them. So I have played a few of them. But not all of them. Definitely not all of them, because there are quite a few of them at this point. Ryan posts much love from Wales, and I'm glad to hear that because there is a map of Wales in my background here. Ernani says, I saw you played Teotihuacan again, this time on Board Game Arena. Yeah, my last two plays have been on Board Game Arena. Most of my plays of heavier games have been on Board Game Arena recently. Do you still think it is too heavy for you? I believe you said the last time you played it. So I have to admit, every time I play Teotihuacan, I really just want to end up playing Sulkin. I just like Sulkin better, it's just personal preference. And I think part of it is that Sulkin has a lot of icons on the board, but they are spaced out in a really pleasant way. Whereas there are so many icons on the Teotihuacan board that they all and they all kind of blend into the background. They're not separated from the background much. And I don't know. It's just personal preference. I loved Sulkin. That's the game in that series that I gravitate to so far. I don't know if I'll return to Teotihuacan again. I kind of just played it because my other two friends wanted to play it. Let's see. I'll go over to my topics real quick and I'll jump back to questions in a second. We did finally pendulum, the whole pendulum thing in Canada. That's been crazy. We just haven't had that happen in the past, where Panda forgot to ship some games to a fulfillment center. Human mistake, but it's just crazy, and crazy that it's taken so long to fix it. I've never seen an air freight shipment take 3 weeks to arrive. It has finally arrived, and D6 in Canada has told us that they're planning to start shipping it today, probably be picked up on Thursday and Friday by their couriers. So thank you so much, everyone in Canada who's been so incredibly patient about Pendulum and the Scythe Complete Rulebook. Really, really appreciate it. And for champions in Canada, we're going to do something to make it up for you in the very near future. You'll see what I mean pretty soon. Oh, the big news about Summer Games that I wanted to share. Almost forgot about this. Actually, two other things. One non-big news thing is my top 10 video this week. I rarely talk about Stonemaier games in my top 10 videos, but this week I'm talking about I'm referencing this because last year I did a video about my favorite mechanisms in Stonemaier games. I'm doing a video about my favorite components in Stonemaier games products, or 10 different brands, or 10 different games. I'm doing a video about that as a top 10 video this Sunday, so keep an eye out for that. But the big news is that we have been working for Panda for a while, and we continue to work with Panda to find more environmentally friendly solutions for packing our games. and for the components in our games. They use recycled plastic, recycled wood, things like that. We are looking for strips to add to cards instead of using shrink wrap around decks of cards. They've tested that a lot, but they're still finding that the ink is rubbing off on the strips a little bit. So we're still working on that. But the big news is that they found that there are a lot of different options for biodegradable plastic bags. Because one of the problems with plastic, especially disposable plastic, is that it goes into a landfill and it's there pretty much forever. However, there are biodegradable solutions. And we are now like effectively immediately, but you'll see it in games and products that release in 3 to 4 to 5 months. All of the bags in those games, if they need bags, all the bags in those games will be biodegradable. So hopefully you won't just throw them out. Hopefully we're only putting bags in games that you actually use in the games. But if you do end up throwing out bags for our games, those bags will biodegrade after around 3 years. I have confirmed with Panda that it's not like they're going to, if you keep those bags in your box, they're not going to melt away and ruin the components. They'll just become, I know they'll still function as bags. They're designed to biodegrade in landfills, not inside the game box. So they will be perfectly fine in the game box. But I was really happy to hear that. I've tested samples on them. I've seen samples. I dropped water on the bags to see how the bags would respond to water. They responded just fine. They held up really well. But this is, I think, especially with all the wildfires, the hurricanes, we are seeing climate change having a pretty big impact on our world right now. And so I'm happy to make a small difference, and hopefully these small differences will add up with these biodegradable bags. Yeah, so I'm really excited about that, if you can't tell. Grant thanked me for my recommendation of Quacks of Quedlinburg, a game that I really, really do love. Haven't gotten to play it in the last 6 months, unfortunately, but I'm looking forward to playing it again. Maybe there'll be an online implementation. Is there a digital version of Quacks? I'd love to be able to play that. George says, can I tell us something about the upcoming Stonemaier charity? Yeah, George, thanks for asking about that. We do have our annual charity auction coming up on September 30th. It'll run from September 30th to October 2nd, and it'll be for... I guess it's fine to share this. I haven't formally announced this, but the things that you'll get if you win one of the charity auctions is you'll get an advanced copy of Wingspan Oceania, you'll get a signed copy of the Scythe hardcover complete rulebook, and you'll get one in-stock product of your choice from Stonemaier Games. Your money will go to a charity selected by one of the content creators featured in the auction. So every year I reach out to 10 different content creators in the board game community, like podcasters, bloggers, reviewers, people like that. And I feature their channel so you can hopefully discover some new great content. And I feature a charity selected by them. So each of them have selected a charity, and the winning bid for each auction will go to that charity. There are ways that and usually it ends up being around $500 because the money ends up being matched by Stonemaier Games and a little bit by Fulfill Right. So pretty expensive to get involved. If you don't have $500 sitting around to bid on one of these auction items, that's totally fine. You can also participate by simply checking out the auction when it goes live and choosing one or more of the different bloggers or content creators and pressing the thumb button on Board Game Geek under their auction item. And for the content creator that has the most thumbs, we will donate $1 per thumb to their charity of choice as well, up to $5,000. So I don't know how much of an impact that'll have, but if you want to participate just by saying, "Hey, I love this content creator," or "I love this charity, I want to support that charity," all you have to do is press the thumb. It doesn't cost you anything to do that, and you can support the charity auction by doing that. You'll see more details about this in the September 30th e-newsletter from Stonemaier Games. Derek says, what's your next game that I'm wanting to make? Well, I'm currently designing 2 games. So those are the games that I'm wanting to make. They're games in progress, and I haven't revealed what they are. But I appreciate your curiosity about what they are. Wendy says, did I experiment with a different shipping carrier recently? Did you receive positive feedback from that? We haven't done that recently, Wendy. We were considering an experiment of letting customers in the U.S., we're going to start with the U.S., choose their shipping carrier, their courier for any orders from Stonemaier Games, often at an additional cost. So, for example, our standard is to ship via FedEx SmartPost, which FedEx takes the products from our fulfillment center, and then they give it to USPS somewhere along the line, and USPS does the final fulfillment of the order, which has mixed responses. I think it works fine in some areas. It works really poorly in other areas. And so we're experimenting with the option of giving people the option of choosing like UPS or FedEx Home or FedEx 3-day or 2-day. I don't know how far we'll take it, but letting people upgrade their shipping at a cost to get the carrier they want. So, but it does require a lot of infrastructure on the back end for us to get that to work, and we are working on that. I don't know exactly when that experiment will go live. Maybe with Wingspan Oceania. We'll see about that. Chad says that he and his wife write down their highest scores and who achieved it on the inside of their Azul box. I've heard of some people doing that for general games, not just Azul. He says it gives us an added goal to reach other than just winning the current game. Have I ever done this with a game? I haven't, but I wish I remembered to do it because I love the idea of doing that, writing down the high scores. I do whenever I have a game where you are, like a roll and write game where you're writing down the high scores somewhere on sheets of paper. I do always keep those sheets of paper in the box and circle the winner so they're easier to find. But I haven't actually written down on the box top yet. Ivan says, will there be a hardcover Scythe complete rulebook? And there will be, yes. We're working on it now. It should be out with the revised complete spiral-bound version in early 2021. Rosie has a nice comment here. She says, just wanted to say a huge thanks for your Kickstarter advice blogs. It helped us hugely, and yesterday we got funded in just 75 minutes. That's awesome, Rosie. Congratulations. What's the name of your game? Feel free to post it in the comments here. Vito says, did I get a chance to check out the One Lonely Outpost Kickstarter? I shared it on one of your posts that it was like the Stardew Valley in space. I did check that out. Yeah, it looked... I kind of wish there was a little bit more gameplay information there, but it was neat to check out. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Kevin's Tapestry expansion arrived while I was live here. Nice. Angela says, I saw a preview for Iron Harvest. I thought it was a Scythe expansion video. Then I was told it was a video game. Yeah, it's a video game set in the 1920 plus world. They have the video game rights. We have the tabletop rights to the 1920 plus world for our Scythe series of games. Angela says, do I plan on playing it? Maybe. I mean, it does look like a beautiful game. I haven't really played real-time strategy games in a long time. And I don't play many video games. But I probably should check it out just to see what it's like, because it does look pretty awesome. Chad says, oh, I see. Okay. I won't say that out loud because it's not exactly PG-13, but thank you for mentioning. Chad explains his reference to New Girl here. Miles says, are there any new shows that I've enjoyed? He says he's enjoyed Raised by Wolves. I'll have to check that out. Right now I'm watching The Legend of Korra as my lunchtime show. And in the evening, we just finished up the second season of The Umbrella Academy. We are still watching our way through Psych, which is an older show that Megan enjoys that she's sharing with me. And then I want to watch The Boys. I've heard good things about The Boys. And there's American Ninja Warrior is actually back. I just found that they did actually film a season of Ninja Warrior during the pandemic. So I'm looking forward to getting back to American Ninja Warrior. Okay, let's see. Just looking for other questions. I think I've covered almost everything. Yeah, I've covered all of my topics, so I'll just focus on questions for the rest of the live cast here. Ilya says, I just learned that Uwe Rosenberg worked on a viticulture expansion with you. How did you come upon that collaboration? Long story short, Uwe played viticulture with Tuscany after that came out, and he wrote me a message on Board Game Geek and said that he really enjoyed it. And I was just overwhelmed by this. Uwe was one of my favorite designers in the world, and to have him take the time to reach out to me and say that just meant the world to me. It was one of the best emails I've ever gotten. And as part of that conversation, I kind of just threw out there, I was like, I'll take this opportunity. And I said to Uwe, if you'd ever want to design a few promo cards for viticulture, that would be awesome. A few promo visitor cards. That would be incredible. And a few days later, Uwe sent me 80 cards that he designed. In just a few days, he designed 80 visitor cards, which is incredibly difficult. It took me months to design the cards that are in viticulture, and Uwe did it in 3 days. Obviously, they were just like initial ideas; they weren't play tested, but a lot of them were completely viable cards for viticulture. And so I took that list. I remember it very distinctly because I was on jury duty at the time. I got the list, and during breaks at jury duty, I was going through the list to figure out which ones worked or which ones didn't work for the game. And so I ended up taking those ideas that Uwe proposed and cutting a lot of them that didn't necessarily fit into the spirit of the game. But I kept, I believe, 40 of them and play tested them and published them as the More Visitors expansion for viticulture. More is a reference to the Farmers of the More expansion for Agricola, which was designed by Uwe Rosenberg. Yeah, so really, really awesome collaboration there. I was very lucky to have that happen. Charlie says he loves the new Tapestry expansion. I'm glad to hear that. Any word if there will be a Tapestry app? There, well, I don't officially say yes yet, but there is a developer who is working on it, and we are also working on, or Board Game Arena is also working on an implementation for Board Game Arena. So there will be something in the near future, definitely from Board Game Arena, and I don't know the time of that yet, and hopefully a digital version, full AI digital version too. Jason says, what game mechanism am I most interested in exploring in game design, but you haven't yet worked it into one of my published designs? So a few of my favorite mechanisms that I haven't really done much with, there might be a few Tapestry civs that deal with this stuff, but I love I Cut You Choose, or I Price You Choose. I love Push Your Luck. There is a civilization in Tapestry that has Push Your Luck, but I love to do that in a greater sense. And I love one-way action selection or worker selection time tracks, like in Tokaido or High Rise, which I mentioned earlier, and Glenmore. Love that mechanism in games, so I'd love to work those into one of my games. Maybe they'll all fit into the same game in the end. Joe says that he and his wife recently started playing Rolling Realms. Rolling Realms. We are really enjoying it, but some of the wording is mildly confusing for a few realms. Totally agree with that, Joe. I mean, I was kind of constrained to fit everything onto one page, and so it is a little confusing. However, if you go to our website, there is an FAQ that is very helpful that you can download. It requires you to print another page, but it has probably answers to all of your questions on the FAQ. And in the final printed version, there will be a full rulebook with better wording on each of the realms as well. Jason says that I've published campaign games with Charterstone, Scythe, Rise of Fenris, and the solo campaign for Tapestry. Am I looking at possibly including campaigns with other games, either games already published or new designs? You know, it's not necessarily something that we target. In fact, I've moved away from campaigns a little bit because I think there's so many campaign games right now that it can also be almost be kind of daunting to get into a campaign game. Because there are so many options. You ask yourself, am I going to be able to finish this? Especially with the pandemic when it's really hard to get together with people. So I've been moving away from the campaign format, but I still want to tell stories over multiple games. So I have been looking for ways to do that. I think Alexander Pfister has done some really interesting things with that, with like Maracaibo. I think that tells a story, if you want it to, over multiple games, but you don't have to actually play through the campaign with the same people. And there's no, you don't have to say, okay, over the next 6 weeks, we need to play this game 12 times. Nothing like that. So I think he's doing some cool things with that I might be interested in exploring in the Stonemaier game space as well. Michael says, will the Wingspan Big Box accommodate sleeved cards? And yes, yeah, we design all of our inserts to accommodate sleeved cards. There are some rare exceptions to that, but at least in terms of width and length, we do target that for all of our inserts. Someone did point out recently that the Tapestry expansion insert is a little bit too narrow for sleeved cards. It's a little unfortunate. It wasn't our intention, but the insert in the Tapestry expansion is more used for the landmarks because the cards just get shuffled into the cards in the core deck anyway. So you're not really using that insert for cards. But I wish we had made it big enough to accommodate sleeved cards anyway. But yeah, of course, in the big box, if we make an organizer specifically for a game, definitely going to accommodate sleeved cards. Julian says, is it normal for me to not have gotten shipping notification for plans employees? I would say that's normal, yeah. When our fulfillment centers ship thousands of games, it takes days, often weeks, for them to do so. So, yeah, it's definitely normal for you to not receive it yet. Our shipping target for plans employees, as advertised from the first day, was that it would ship roughly in mid-September. And so we are still very solidly in mid-September. If you haven't gotten a notification and it's late September, let us know. That will be a problem. But at this point, no, it's perfectly normal for you to not have gotten your shipping notification. Gerald says, Wingspan is a huge success. Did it go through more gameplay changes in development than Between Two Cities and Between Two Castles of Mad King Ludwig? No, I would say they all had a similar development arc to them. Madison just bought Solkin because of how often I bring it up. That's awesome. I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. John says, are there any games that you avoid due to a take that mechanism, or if a game has no way for you to catch up if you're behind? Let's see. So I would say, I mean, the thing take that games are not games that I gravitate to more very often. However, the thing that comes to mind are some games that I love that have take that elements in them. The one that comes to mind up front is Lords of Waterdeep. It has some cards that I really don't like in the game. I love Lords of Waterdeep, but it does have some take that cards. And ideally, if I owned a copy of it, I just mostly play digitally now. But if I own a copy of it, I would probably just remove those cards, and I would have no problem with doing that. I understand why they're in the game, but I just don't enjoy them. So I'd probably take them out. Same with probably Terraforming Mars. As for catch-up mechanisms, I don't think as much about catch-up mechanisms. I don't mind being behind in games as long as I'm doing something satisfying and fun. Winning and losing, winning does feel good, but like in Tapestry, if I finish 100 points behind someone else in Tapestry, I don't care because I've had a good time playing Tapestry and building my little civilization. So catch-up mechanisms, while I do think about them for our games, and I think about ways to get players to catch up, I'm okay with gaps in points when I play personally. And I won't name the game, but there was a game I played recently where, and it isn't a Stonemaier game, but everyone ended up with almost the same exact score, and that to me is a lot less satisfying than having someone who is a lot ahead, and maybe someone, even if it's me, who's a lot behind, because it shows that the choices that we made in the games really mattered. Whereas if you always kind of end up at the same spot due to maybe catch-up mechanisms, to me that isn't as satisfying. Cody says, who will sign the hardcover Scythe rulebooks for the auction? I will. Jakob lives up on a mountain in Poland. He's really hard to get stuff to and really hard to get stuff from. But I'm much easier to reach for stuff like this. So I will be the one who signs the Scythe hardcover rulebooks. And I'm the designer of Scythe. So just like Elizabeth will be signing the Wingspan Oceania expansions that will be part of the charity auction, which I didn't mention. Wingspan Oceania will be signed by Elizabeth for the charity auction. The Scythe complete rulebooks will be signed by me. Charles says, since even more cards seem potentially too excessive as another expansion, are you going to possibly do a Ticket to Ride style release? That is a whole separate core box for Asian birds. No, I mean, our methodology for expansions is that they expand the core game. Ticket to Ride releases completely new games. I think it's almost misleading for them to call them expansions. But I do understand there's an expansion format where you kind of expand upon the core game by, I don't know. To me, Ticket to Ride is a series of separate games within the same brand. We have no plans of doing that with Wingspan. We're going to keep each expansion separate, and you'll tie it into the core game. But the thing that we're starting to mention in rulebooks, including Wingspan Oceania, is that you don't have to put all the cards together. You don't even have to play with all the cards. You can shuffle two decks together, like the Oceania deck and the European deck. You can play with those two shuffled together and play a game with that. Or you can shuffle all the cards together if you want. And what I usually do is I do keep all my cards shuffled together, but I just grab one stack of them, one almost random stack, and I play with that stack in a given game. And then I might set that aside and play with a completely different stack in another game. Brist says, have I ever had a dream or even a nightmare about board gaming? Probably. I've been told that sometimes when I talk in my sleep, I talk about board game mechanisms and board game themes, but I don't remember a nightmare specifically about it. Cody says that he uses Board Game Stats. It's a paid app to track his plays. Yeah, I don't track my plays. I just I rate games after I play them on Board Game Geek. He says you might be interested to see some of the neat insights, like locations, players, games, version, scores, winners, win percentage. That's true. I do love data, so I probably should do that so I can start to collect that data. Mitchell just got Viticulture today. Can't wait to play. That's awesome, Mitchell. I hope you enjoy it. Ronak says, I just saw The Social Dilemma on Netflix. Have I seen it? What are your views? I must admit, I don't know what The Social Dilemma is. So what is that? Rosie says that her game on Kickstarter that funded in, I believe she said 45 or 75 minutes, is called Bots Up Game. She says it's a fun, competitive game where you build robots and then battle to be the last bot standing. Well, congratulations on funding so quickly, Rosie. That's really awesome to hear. Edgar says he got plans employees on Monday. I love it that I can put the tapestry cards in the expansion insert, but the rest of the cards don't fit. It would have been cool if those would also fit instead of just the tapestry cards. Any idea later if tapestry will get a big box? I don't think we have any plans to do a big box for tapestry because the original box is so big. But you're right. I do. I totally missed that. I didn't think about the expansion insert being used as a storage solution for cards, more as just a transportation method of getting the cards for you. And while it does fit the cards, it does not fit sleeve cards, which is unfortunate. Fortunately, you can just put those cards in the main box with the other cards, but ideally they would have fit. Briss says, am I a cooperative games fan? And if so, which one is your favorite? I do have a bunch of favorite cooperative games. I don't know if Cody can find the video right now that I've done on it, but I probably need to do a new video because it's been probably over a year since I did my video about my favorite cooperative games. Time Stories is definitely up there. I absolutely love Time Stories. Recently, I've really enjoyed The Crew. I also enjoy The Mind. Shipwreck Arcana, I really enjoy. Burgle Brothers is probably on the list. I'm looking over at my shelf over here. Flip Ships, Summit, the cooperative version of Summit, I really enjoy. Those are some of my favorites. Just a short list. Mitchell says, can I share anything about the new games that I'm working on? So the games that I'm currently designing. The one that I've talked probably the most about, and I haven't really said much at all, is that I'm designing an open world cooperative exploration game. That I'm, as far as I know, I think it'll be the most open world tabletop game ever, with a step down from role playing games, which are, I think, more open than anything that I can do with a kind of set tabletop mechanisms. But yeah, that's what I'm working on right now. I'm really excited about that. Daniel says, Restoration Games has been doing this for a while, but are there any games you wish you could give a modern twist to? The one game that always comes to mind when someone asks this is Scotland Yard. I love Scotland Yard. I wasn't, when I recently or a couple of years ago, I rediscovered it as an adult, rediscovered my childhood copy and realized how good of a game it is. And if it wasn't being actively reprinted, I would have pursued it as a game for Stonemaier Games to reprint and probably not make a lot of changes to, other than maybe offering some new maps. But it is actively in print, and so we didn't pursue it. But that's the one that comes to mind. Looks like Jason also just got his plans employees delivered 5 minutes ago. A lot of people are getting it delivered during this video. Tim says, have I played Kitchen Rush? He says, my wife likes a video game similar to it, so I did some research. It reminded him of Pendulum with its real-time worker placement mechanism. Interesting to see the hourglasses as the workers. I have not played it. I think the challenge with that, though, and people mentioned this during Pendulum, during the Pendulum unveiling, is that if your hourglasses are workers and there's an issue with any of those hourglasses, like the sand gets stuck or the time is off, and time on hourglasses is often off by a few seconds. It's not precise. On yours compared to other players, that can make a big difference. Whereas in Pendulum, everyone is sharing the same timer. So if there is a timer that runs 5 seconds long, that impacts all players equally, and so it's okay. I think it's a little different when every player has their own worker hourglass. But I do still need to play Kitchen Rush. I have a friend who really enjoys it. Tobias says, did I announce a Wingspan big box? Also, did you announce a release date or quarter? Definitely not a release date or quarter, no. But I did announce over a month ago, really, in the Wingspan Facebook group, I asked for feedback about what people would want if we made a Wingspan big box. And again, I want to emphasize, it is just a box and an organizer. There is no gameplay content that will go in this. And we took a lot of feedback from that Facebook post, and we are actively working on designing it. But it will take quite a bit of time to figure out how the box works. It'll take multiple samples. So probably maybe around this time next year, maybe. Ernani says he'll be playing his first game of viticulture tonight. Any tips? I mean, the main thing I would recommend for playing your first game of viticulture is to just play through a season. Don't try to understand how everything interconnects and works. Just play through a season. Choose your spring wake up time. Then take an action in the summer. Take an action or two in the summer. Then take an action or two in the winter, and also get that fall bonus, that fall visitor card. And then after that year, kind of look back and see how all those different stages connect together, or will connect together later in the game to result in how you're going to fill wine orders and get points. It kind of work. You can work backwards from there. You can say, okay, if I want to fill this wine order, I have to take this action to do so. I need to have made wine by crushing grapes. I need to. I'm working backwards. It's easier maybe to work forwards because you build buildings so that you can plant vines. You pluck grapes off those vines. I will say one very common mistake in viticulture that is made for some reason is that when you harvest your fields, do not remove the cards from those fields. Thematically, you are plucking grapes off your vines. You are not uprooting and destroying those vines every time you harvest your fields. That would be a lot harder to do in real life, and it makes the game a lot harder if you do that. So you're going to plant vine cards, and when you harvest, you will take glass tokens that represent grapes, and you'll put them in your crush pad, and the cards stay in the fields. So don't miss that. Make sure those cards stay in your fields, and you're just gaining grapes from those vines. That's a common mistake that is made, more commonly than I would hope, because the example is very clear in the rulebook, I think, of how to do that. Brist says, do I like to attend local conventions? Do I bring the whole team, or do I attend with myself and friends? Well, until recently, the whole team was just me and Alan working part-time, and Joe and Alex have joined Stonemaier Games in the last year. So there isn't really a team, I guess there wasn't really a team aspect to it. But when I attend local conventions, which I do attend a convention that I love called Geekway to the West in St. Louis, I highly recommend it. Just 4 days of playing games. I just go as me, and I go to play games with a bunch of different people, a bunch of different strangers, or people that I only see at Geekway to the West. So I wouldn't say there's really a team element of it. It is not a Stonemaier Games event that we go there. It's me just going and playing games with a lot of people. But I am representing Stonemaier Games when I go play those games. Daniel says, recently you added a tiebreaker with the Tapestry expansion that was modified during the design process. The tiebreaker is the tallest building is the tiebreaker in Tapestry. Has there been any other mechanisms that you were excited about but didn't really fit into the final product? This is actually a weird thing where I had this as the tiebreaker, and Morton, who I highly respect, he runs the Automa Factory and serves as a developer for Stonemaier Games. He recommended that I remove the tiebreaker. I think his reasoning was that he thought that people would be surprised by it, or they would target certain buildings all the time to get that tiebreaker. And in hindsight, I listened to a lot of Morton's advice. I wish I hadn't listened to that advice, because it is a fun tiebreaker to have the tallest building and have that be the tiebreaker in the game. And I don't think it reflects in player behavior. I don't think someone would think, okay, the tiebreaker is the tallest building, so I will always go after this building. It's just, there are too many paths in Tapestry to take to have players make a decision based on that. And also, having a tiebreaker in Tapestry is exceptionally rare, because you're scoring somewhere between 350 and 150 points. So you're hardly ever going to have that tiebreaker anyway. If it's a game where you had a tiebreaker all the time, I agree, it would be a terrible tiebreaker, but not in Tapestry. Daniel says, I guess your question is, have there ever been other mechanisms that I was excited about but didn't really fit into the final product? So I would say, this was a special circumstance. Definitely, there have been plenty of times where I've had mechanisms that I'm excited about that didn't fit into the final product, but it's because they weren't fun or functional or balanced. Like, they didn't belong in any version of the product. But yeah, for any game, there are many, many mechanisms that I'm excited about that just don't end up working the way that I hope they would. George says, have I studied marketing or economics in college when I was a student, or did I start learning this by myself later on? I did study international business in college, and there were marketing courses, there were economics courses. Unfortunately, I would say very little, very, very little I learned in business school and college actually applied to the real world of running a small business. I would say a lot of those things, like accounting, they matter for bigger businesses. Not that accounting doesn't matter for a small business, but like I hire an accountant to do that. It matters if I wanted to be an accountant, but if I didn't want to be an accountant, it matters very little. So I did study those things, George, but I would say I've learned the vast majority of what I've learned about running a business by actually running a business. And actually from reading some great business books after college, but not during college. John says, am I going to do a complete viticulture set when the expansion comes out, or can we get it so that we can get all of it at once? No, John, that isn't really something that we do. I like people to be able to buy what they want and not buy what they don't want. And combining it into one complete set, I think, also kind of disrespects people who have already bought those things separately. So, no, I think our strategy across all of our games is that that there is no overlap between products and you buy things separately based on what you actually want. So if you are interested in viticulture, don't wait for some complete viticulture to come out later, because that's not going to happen. I think there is the possibility of a big empty box for viticulture someday, kind of like the Wingspan big box organizer in it, but no gameplay content in that box. Matu says, have I thought about a video on Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion? I probably need to play it. I want to play it to learn from the tutorial in it, because I've heard there's an excellent tutorial in Gloomhaven Jaws of the Lion. You maybe have heard me talk about many times that Gloomhaven was the game that I originally backed on Kickstarter. I played it 6 or 7 times. Not a game for me. I'm really just not into tactical combat games. But I have heard great things about how the tutorial in Jaws of the Lion works really well, and how the books work in it to replace the tiles in the original game. So I don't expect the game itself to blow me away, because I'm not a tactical combat person, but I do want to learn from it as a designer who wants to make better tutorials in my games. Chad says, how close have I gotten an ace yet in disc golf? I've gotten about 10 feet away, but it was one of the best shots that I've had yet. So only one shot, and it was about 10 feet away. Yeah. Let's see. A comment that needs to be removed here for harassment. Yeah, that doesn't happen very often. Briss says, how many games do you have in my collection? I have around 100 games in my collection right now. James says, how do I decide which designers to publish? What does that decision-making process look like? That's a big question, James. A very short answer is we have a submission process on our website. You can look at it under submission guidelines on our website. And people submit games to us through that form. The form filters out a lot of people whose games don't fit into the types of games that we're looking for. And if they do get through that filter, my coworker Alan looks at those submissions and identifies games that could be really, really exciting. And if we want to check out those games, we ask for more information. We ask for a playthrough video, a rulebook, things like that. And eventually we might get it to the table if it gets through all these different steps. And then we decide if we want to publish that game, after playing it. Briss says, do I worry that a new game design might be late to what gamers are currently looking at that specific time? No, I don't worry about that. I just try to make great games that I think could be good at any given time. Let's see. I'm a little over time here, so I'm going to look for any last few questions. James asked, which of the games that I published is my favorite? My answer for that is whichever game someone else is most excited to play with me at any given time. I don't really have a favorite out of our 10 games. Daniel says, with all the expansions planned for Wingspan, are there any concerns for diluting the deck? No, not concerned about diluting the deck for Wingspan, because I just don't like. It's not a game where like certain cards are always more powerful than others. You could argue that's the Ravens are pretty good, but for the most part, the cards are circumstantially better at different times. But it's not like Magic where you have rare cards and uncommon cards and common cards. But like I mentioned in the expansion, we are starting to recommend that people take 2 decks, like 2 different expansions, or the core game and 1 expansion, to shuffle those cards together and play with those in a given game. But I think that's also a lot to sort through at the end of each game. So I would just recommend shuffling everything together, choosing a stack of those cards and playing with those cards in one game, and then choosing a different stack for a different game. Kevin says, would a 4X game ever fit for your company? We do have one 4X game, arguably 2. Scythe is one. Tapestry is arguably another one. it could fit depending on our submission guidelines. So feel free to check those out to see if it would fit. Sometimes I think 4X games try to do too much and cause somewhat of a mental overload among players. And also the combat part is really tricky because we don't typically publish games that are heavy in combat. Definitely not war games. So it depends on how heavy that combat mechanism is in your 4X game. Sean says, Stonemaier Games has enough games. Have I ever considered a big tournament of Stonemaier games? Maybe to showcase a new game. I don't know if I do a tournament for a new game, because then people are learning that game on the fly rather than having like the best players of each game play. I would love to maybe do something online. I think it's tough to get the best players worldwide together to play a game, but online that might be possible. Although our games also really aren't designed for the tournament format. That isn't a focus for our game designs. I think there are certain games that are designed for tournaments, and I wouldn't say Stonemaier games are fitting into that category. Mark says, did I get a haircut? Yes, I gave myself a haircut this past weekend. My goal whenever I give myself a haircut is to not mess up terribly, and I think I achieved that goal this time. James says, has COVID had a negative or positive impact on my business? Another big question, even though I'm overdue time here. James, these are great questions. I would say look up the article on Stonemaier Games' website about how the coronavirus and pandemic has impacted Stonemaier Games, because I do have a long article about that on our website. Maybe Cody will post it in the comments below. Last, 2 more questions, then I'll call it for the day. Justin says, do I have a theme that I wish more board games had, and would you create that one for Stonemaier? Not a specific theme, but I do love, I love innovative themes that we haven't seen a lot in the industry. I don't have one specifically that comes to mind, but I do love just seeing themes that aren't repeated over and over again. And Jason said, although I do love also familiar themes. Sometimes familiarity can be a nice thing too. And last, Jason says, how can I become a playtester for the published version of Rolling Realms? We're not looking for playtesters right now, Jason, but I appreciate you asking about that. If you do eventually want to become a playtester, you can sign up as a Stonemaier ambassador. And once every year or 2, I send a test to Stonemaier ambassadors who want to become playtesters. And if you pass the test, then you enter our playtester pool. All right, I think that's it. Lots of questions today. Very, very busy live cast. Oh, and Cody came through in the clutch here and has that article to answer James's question about the COVID impact on Stonemaier Games. I'm going to sign off for the day. Had a great time with you all today, and I will see you at our next weekly live chat. Take care. If you have any further questions, go to the YouTube video, which should be live in about 30 minutes. I'll put this video on there, and I get comments notifications better through YouTube than Facebook for these videos. All right. Have a great day, great Wednesday, great week. Take care. See ya.